So the ASVAB, or the Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery Test, is the test that's used by every single branch of the United States military to determine what jobs that you qualify for. That being said, it's really important that you get a good score to help ensure that you actually qualify for the different jobs that you may want to do. So by law, I can't share the actual questions from the test. So in this video, I'll just stick to official information that's already available on the internet, and then the study materials that I use to prepare. So the first thing you kind of need to have an idea of is how the scoring process works. So the test itself is made up of 9 different sections, but there are 4 sections that are more important than all of the other ones because they comprise your AFQT score. When people mention their ASVAB test score, this is the number that they're usually talking about. So the sections that comprise your AFQT score are paragraph comprehension and word knowledge, and then also the mathematics knowledge section and the arithmetic reasoning section. So basically your English and your math are the most important areas to focus on. Your AFQT score is a percentile from 1 to 99. And the reason this score is so important is because it determines whether or not you're even allowed to enlist in the first place. If your score is too low, you won't be allowed to enlist. Okay, so now you know about the test and a little bit about the scoring process. I'm gonna break down my approach to how I studied for the test. I have never been a good test taker. I've always had a hard time sitting down and doing tests, but when all was said and done, I was able to achieve an 85 on the ASVAB, which is a score that I'm like more than happy with. So here's what I did to study. The first thing I did was I went to my local library and I checked out the ASVAB for Dummies book. The version that my library had was the 2015 to 2016 version, so it was a little bit dated, but all of the information still seemed very accurate and up to date and plenty good to help you study. So in that book, they just have a section covering each of the 9 sections on the test. They obviously put more of a focus on those AFQT subjects. And each section was great because it walked you through everything step by step. At the end, there were practice problems that you could do. I didn't even really focus much on the topics outside of the AFQT portions. If you know that you really want to do like an electric job or something very specific, by all means, like double down on that area. But say you're short on time and you just really want to maximize your score, I would focus primarily on those 4 topics that I already mentioned. So using that book was my first thing. The second thing I did was I used ChatGPT. ChatGPT is a great tutor. You know, I never really grasped math that well in high school. I feel like I was pretty behind in that area. So that's where I had to double down and focus the most personally. So what I would do is I would just read through the chapters of this book for the math section. When I reached a concept that I wanted to master before moving on, I would just take a picture of the page, put it in ChatGPT, and have it give me practice problems for that specific section. If I still wasn't getting it, I would have it break down whatever problem step by step and walk me through it until I was ultimately able to do that on my own. So I by no means mastered math or algebra or geometry or all those things before I took the test, but I was able to gain a really good base level understanding and knowledge of all the different types of math and principles that would help me come to the right answer. The next tool I used to study was just good old-fashioned flashcards. If there were formulas or things that I just knew that I wanted to remember, I would put them on flashcards and then just drill those a few times until I got them down. And then finally, I did practice tests. So I believe I did a total of 3 practice tests on my own leading up to taking the test. I did one right at the very beginning to kind of figure out a baseline of where I'm at, what I need to focus on. I did another one maybe halfway through my studying time. And then I did one more straight from the ASVAB for Dummies book, closer to the actual date of my test. So I just utilized the free tests that I could find online. There's a few different options out there. Probably the most frustrating thing with some of those tests online is they don't give you a timer or anything. So maybe before you do those, figure out how much time you have for each section. You can look that up and find that easily and use that to gauge how much time you want to give yourself during that practice test to get an accurate read of how you'll do in the actual test. Something your recruiter may offer you is to do a little practice test in the office. So I did a practice test. It was maybe 15 questions, didn't take long at all, but it just hits those main AFQT topics. I think I got an 80 on that practice test. After I took that test, my confidence was boosted a little bit. So I scheduled taking the actual ASVAB like 2 weeks from that date, just to give myself a little bit of extra time to double down on some math concepts. So a few other quick tips. It's good to know that the ASVAB is multiple choice, which is huge. That helps so much when maybe you don't know the exact answer to something. Usually there's a couple questions that are really far away from the correct answer. So if you're able to use deductive reasoning to figure out which problems probably aren't the right answer, you can increase your chances of getting the right answer to like 50%. So no calculators are allowed when you take the test. We were just allowed to have like a single piece of scratch paper. They would give us more if we needed it, but you're just using paper and pencil, no calculator. So a lot of my studying was like learning how to do all those things that you kind of depend on a calculator to do. Being very comfortable without a calculator and being fast without a calculator is gonna help you on the math portions. So in the end, I took the test and I finished with an 85. That means I'm in the top 15% of people who take the test. And so I was very happy with that score. It opened up all the jobs that I was interested in doing. And so what I would say to you, if you know that you struggle in a certain area, whether that's math or word knowledge or English, just double down on that. Focus on improving that specific area, and that'll help bring up your overall score. It's also good to know if you're not happy with your score the first time you take the test, you can retake the test after about a month's time. But best of luck for you as you take your tests. If you got some value out of this, please give it a thumbs up. Consider subscribing for some future videos about joining the military, what all the process entails. But I'll see you guys in the next video.